We're rolling. Look, it's not just me that has technical difficulties. Sometimes it's just technology itself. So, hey everybody, it's Bryan, Director of Skincare Research at Paula's Choice Skincare, and I'm normally doing these live chats from my home office in Michigan, and here I am in our studio in Seattle, Washington at the Paula's Choice, I guess you could say world headquarters. I mean, we are based in Seattle, Washington. And I've been here most of the week, got here Monday night, had a lovely dinner with Paula herself and caught up on some stuff. I haven't seen Paula since we were together in Europe in May, which was a lot of togetherness. So I think at the end of that trip, we were just kind of like, okay, you go back to Michigan, you go back to Washington, and we'll talk on the phone. It's been a really productive week here, and I was looking forward to being here in Seattle because the summer weather here in Seattle is typically some of the best in the country. And this week, because of some wildfires in the eastern part of Washington as well as up in Canada, from what I understand, there has been a layer of hazy smoke in the air. In fact, yesterday, I read a headline in my news feed that the air quality in Seattle was worse than Beijing, which is known for having some of the worst air quality in the industrialized world, which is telling you something. I mean, we haven't had any rain. I know it's supposed to rain here all the time, right? It doesn't. And so this smoke is just hanging around. But I'll be here blinking and trying not to breathe too deeply for the next hour to take your skincare questions. And we have our social media strategist, Francis, here with us, who will be feeding me questions because I don't have my computer right in front of me. So ask away, and I will see what I can do to help.
I've had one question. Will we ever implement using PA in sunscreens?
Will we ever implement using PA in sunscreens? So that is a rating system that was developed in Japan. The PA plus, and then I believe they still have a triple plus. It's supposed to be an extra measure of reassurance to the consumer that the sunscreen in question is providing reliable, more robust protection. The test that they use to determine that is a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say, I guess you could say it's debatable. So to answer your question before I just prattle on, because I can do that, no, we don't have plans to use the PA rating system. We don't think it's a realistic way, at least not compared to the tests that we do follow, like the critical wavelength test to guarantee UVA protection, the regular FDA mandated sunscreen testing that all of our products go through in order to earn their SPF ratings and be called a sunscreen, sold as a sunscreen. What it takes, the test that they use to get the PA rating has a lot of variability in terms of the likelihood of somebody's skin becoming darker when it's exposed to UV light, and what that means and how it's measured. So without getting too technical, I can sum it up and say that I think that the PA rating system, there's some interesting points to it. I don't think it's necessary to have on a sunscreen, my personal opinion. And ultimately, I don't think it is very helpful to consumers, especially when I've often seen it used in the marketplace as a claim of superiority. My sunscreen's better than your sunscreen because mine has the PA rating. But that PA rating is only, it isn't universally agreed upon as a great system for any particular sunscreen to provide an extra measure or better or longer protection. So it's an expensive test from what I understand. So it's just not, I don't think from a business perspective on the Paula's Choice side, I wouldn't necessarily consider it money well spent when all of the testing that we typically do nicely covers what consumers need to know in terms of broad spectrum, in terms of SPF rating, in terms of water resistance, if that applies, and then other factors that go into sunscreens.
Next question is, what are your thoughts on hydrogen peroxide in cleansers?
What are my thoughts on hydrogen peroxide in cleansers? I haven't seen any cleansers with hydrogen peroxide. Do you know of any?
Let me
That's-
find the question again.
Yeah, I find that, I'm wondering if they're asking, like I've seen hydrogen dimethicone as an ingredient in several different types of products, but that isn't a peroxide.
Okay, that's just a question. So
Oh, okay.
move on from that.
Hydrogen peroxide in and of itself is a problematic ingredient for skin because it's a highly unstable ingredient. It causes pretty immediate free radical damage on skin. So yes, it works as a disinfectant. Years and years ago, it had its place in wound care. In fact, I remember being in grade school in the early 80s, and you'd get a cut, and your teacher would say, "Oh, you need to go see the nurse," or in our case, it was the secretary who handled boo-boos, and they would always clean the wound, whatever it was, with hydrogen peroxide. And I remember as a kid how much that hurt, and just kind of, but not knowing to question it. I'm 7, 8 years old, and I just want to feel better. And yeah, it was little did I know at the time, it was actually causing more damage and delaying the healing process. In a cleanser, when it's mixed with other ingredients, surfactants and whatnot, I think its damaging effects are diluted, but I wouldn't recommend hydrogen peroxide in a cleanser. I wouldn't say go ahead and look for it. There's so many great cleansers out there, even if its impact on skin is, its damaging impact on skin is muted, which I suspect would be the case, there are better cleansers out there. And why use a cleanser that contains a potentially problematic ingredient when there are so many that don't?
How can you fade scars?
How can you fade scars? You can say who's asking these questions too.
That was from Liz.
Oh, okay, okay. Liz, what type of scar are you referring to? You could let us know. If you're referring to the post-breakout marks, post-acne marks, technically those are not scars. Those are what's known as post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, and those will fade on their own in time, but for some people it can take a lot of time, much more than what most of us, myself included, would want to wait. The marks can be pink to red if you have a lighter skin tone like me, or if you have a medium to dark skin tone, the post-breakout marks tend to be tannish to a dark brown, because with the darker skin tones having a higher content of skin pigment, melanin, melanin gets involved in that inflammatory response, whereas light skin tones have an absence, a lower amount of melanin, not an absence as in like a total amount, just a lot less of it. And so ours is more inflammatory in terms of the red and the pink side of things. There isn't a pigment per se involved. But neither of those colors of marks are pretty, and they can be stubborn. I have found that the combination of a leave-on beta-hydroxyacid exfoliant, a topical vitamin C product that contains anywhere from 10 to 25% vitamin C, and you could also consider niacinamide to help fade the look of those marks. And the unsung hero, sort of the MVP of this whole process, is making sure that you protect your skin every day with a broad spectrum sunscreen, because any amount of UV exposure, particularly if your marks are melanin involved, the tan to brown marks, will only make that discoloration linger longer. Obviously, we don't want that, so those would be my top picks. Did she say anything else about different types of scars? Okay.
Okay.
If it is a old scar from a wound, from a past surgery, there really isn't anything you can do skincare wise to fade the scars. They will fade gradually on their own. They'll never go away completely. Any product that says it can eliminate scars is lying. If you have a raised type of scar, which is called a keloidal scar, there are different compression type of products, usually made of various silicones, that you can put over that, over the affected area, and it literally kind of like helps reshape and push down and flatten the scar. The scar doesn't go away, but you can improve its appearance by flattening it so that it better melds in with the surrounding skin. That is about the extent of it. I was going to say something else in that regard. Oh, scars continue to heal. A lot of people don't know this. Scars continue to heal and change in appearance up to 2 years after the original wound or injury that created the scar happens. So if you're 6 months along, if you're 9 months into it, don't give up hope that it's never going to look any better. Keep it protected from sun damage. Use gentle skincare. Don't fall for the myth of scrubbing those types of concerns away, or that you can use products that actually eliminate the scars. In some extreme cases, I'll just close with this, you can talk to a cosmetic surgeon about scar restructuring, where if you just, especially if it's a larger scar, or maybe a scar from a car accident, cosmetic surgeons can do a lot to basically correct the appearance of that scar via surgery. And there's a lot to discuss in that regard. There's pros and cons. It is another surgery, but it is an option if you have a larger, more scary looking, for lack of a better term, scar, and those can often come. I've known people in my life who've had some serious injuries from car accidents, and they have had reconstructive surgery for scar correction, and the results have been, the scar is still there, you don't, but it's replacing something that has become very unsightly and a real hit to someone's self-esteem with something that is much less noticeable, much easier to cover with makeup, and it's just amazing the transformation that can happen when it comes to that.
Okay, we've got some more questions.
All right.
Katie asks, is it possible that she could be sensitive to cyclopentasiloxane?
Cyclopentasiloxane?
Yes, because she breaks up little white heads. She's desperate to find a sunscreen, but she thinks she might have she might be reacting to that, and wonders if that's possible.
It's generally speaking, it's possible to react to or potentially even get a breakout from a wide range of ingredients. I wish there was a definitive list I could give to people and say, just avoid these and you'll never break out again, or just avoid these and you'll never have an allergic or sensitizing response. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. Cyclopentasiloxane is a lighter weight silicone. It has some amount of volatility in that what creates that nice silky smooth finish from products that contain it. That's typically the type of finish you get, especially if cyclopentasiloxane is among the first 5 ingredients. It is a volatile reaction, not the same type of volatile reaction that occurs with fragrance ingredients. That's a different, more potent type of volatile reaction. It's really about, when I say volatile, it's really about how fast the silicone, how fast its texture changes and some evaporation is occurring that leaves that nice dry finish. The molecular size of those ingredients, they're really not known to get stuck in the pore the way certain plant oils can that are smaller, certain emollients can, certain waxes can. So the likelihood, I know a lot of people out there believe that they break out from silicones, any of them, and I'm not saying it isn't possible, but what I think happens in a lot of cases is that because silicones are synthetic, because they have a more chemical sound to them, it's easier to point the finger. I would do this if I didn't know any better. It's easier to point the finger at a silicone type of ingredient than a natural ingredient, an emulsifier, something that might be a bit more recognizable on a label as not being a chemical. I've looked in the literature, in the research, you really can't find definitive studies or information on silicones as a class of ingredients being pore clogging or being acne triggers. However, I acknowledge that the anecdotal experience of I don't know how many exactly. I mean, it's something we hear about fairly regularly. But it's hard to make a decision on something when there isn't research, scientific research to support it, and all you really have to go on is anecdotal evidence. And the example I'll sometimes use is I'm allergic to cats, but that doesn't make cats bad. That doesn't make cats, I mean, Frances, are you allergic to cats? Okay. So if Frances had a cat, I wouldn't, say, well, that cat is going to cause a problem for you just because it caused a problem for me. I would want to take a look, and you could, if you're up for this, when you're trying to get to the bottom of what is causing your breakouts and you're suspecting it's skincare, hair care could be to blame as well, particularly if your breakouts are along the hairline and really no other area of your face. But let's say they're all over or random. You just kind of never know where they're going to pop up. What you could do is take a skincare inventory, write down the ingredients of what you're using, or keep track of the ingredients in the products you're using, and as you experiment with different products and you note that your skin is either getting better or getting worse, you could take a look at what the potential common denominators are in the products that you're using. And maybe you'll notice that cyclopentasiloxane or another silicone like cyclohexasiloxane or phenyltrimethicone is in several of the products that you're using, but maybe there's something else at play. So it can take a bit of detective work to try to figure out really what's behind it. But from a scientific point of view, cyclopentasiloxane is not known to trigger acne or to clog pores. And it doesn't suffocate skin.
Okay, thank you. We've got another question from Dortz. Hypothetically speaking, if layering SPFs, is it better to layer mineral SPFs over synthetic SPFs due to the ability of mineral sunscreens to reflect some of the UV rays? And I think there's a second part. And then any remaining UV rays that get through the mineral sunscreen would be absorbed by the synthetic sunscreen underneath.
Well, there's always going to be some amount of UV radiation that gets through any sunscreen. Unfortunately, no sunscreen is a bulletproof shield. A product that has a blend of both, about 2 to 3% is going to get through. Really not much we can do about that at this point. The holy grail of sunscreen formulations will be the one that really can screen 100% of UV light before it can damage skin. Obviously, with just a tiny amount getting through, that's certainly not a good reason to forego sunscreen. Would you rather have only 2% UV light reach your skin and cause significantly less damage, or have the full onslaught of UV light hit your skin, causing all sorts of damage that has a cascade type effect? Obvious answer. So when you're applying two different sunscreen products that have synthetic, and if one is a so-called synthetic sunscreen, avobenzone, homosalate, octinoxate, and so on, and then the other is pure mineral, I would say put the pure mineral on over the synthetic sunscreen because of the occlusive nature of the mineral actives. I just think that compatibility would work better. But if the first sunscreen that has the synthetic actives also has one of the minerals like zinc oxide, I think in that case it really doesn't matter. And my advice would be to experiment, try it both ways and see what your personal preference is, what works best on your skin. Also, if you're going to be following with makeup of some sort, you might find that the mineral sunscreen, the primary mineral sunscreen, is the one that works better. It's easier to apply makeup over that versus the synthetic. But there can be formulary nuances that affect that one way or another. So again, trial and error, see what works best for you. But there is no hard and fast rule.
Next question is from Anna. Do you have any suggestions for hyperpigmentation of the lips? Also, should a hyaluronic acid only be applied to damp skin? I have read it can suck out moisture. Have read it can suck moisture out of your skin in a dry climate.
Well, which is true. If you live in a dry climate, water alone on skin, it's people tend to think that stopping dry skin or making dry skin feel better is all about preventing water loss, and to some extent that's true, but the secondary component is also helping to repair, strengthen, rebuild skin's protective barrier. And that barrier actually doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of water in it. There are other substances in that barrier that you need to keep intact and give back to your skin. And water alone doesn't do that. So, if you live in an environment that is low humidity and you're using a hyaluronic acid product, or even something that's very glycerin rich, because glycerin, any of those humectant type ingredients have this effect when the concentration of them in the product is high enough. So for glycerin, I believe it's around 10% or greater. You can, rather than dampen your skin with just water, I would rather that you use a moisturizing toner, something that gives your skin, yes, it's in a water base, but you're also giving your skin some cholesterol, some sodium PCA, maybe some ceramides, those barrier replenishing and rebuilding ingredients, and then while your skin is damp with the toner, then you put your hyaluronic acid product on. And if you are in a very dry environment, if what you're using in terms of hyaluronic acid, if it's a product texture like our booster, which is a gel, you'd want to put a lotion or cream type texture on top of that to really seal everything in. And then for the hyperpigmentation on the lips, that is a trickier one, because whether the hyperpigmentation on your lips came from sun damage or it's a hormonal issue where some discoloration ended up in that area, the types of ingredients that you would use on skin, like hydroquinone, maybe some vitamin C for brightening, niacinamide, aren't necessarily great to apply to the lips because, first of all, we lick our lips. The product isn't going to last too long there. And then there's like ingredients like hydroquinone you don't want to ingest. They're fine and the concentrations approved in over-the-counter and prescription products to use topically, but not to ingest. So the question is, what do you do? I'm just trying to think if there's any, I mean, even like AHA, BHA exfoliants, you wouldn't want to apply directly to your mouth, even though if you had like a discoloration on your cheek, exfoliating with those types of products can make a visible difference, which is great. I think for the lips, quite honestly, you'll want to go see a cosmetic dermatologist and discuss light-emitting type treatments that could work. I'm not saying that those treatments wouldn't hurt, but they can have pretty impressive results, and the dermatologist has products at their disposal that they can use to numb the area before the treatment is done. I'm not even 100% sure, I'm kind of speculating here, not even 100% sure if that type of light emitting treatment is done on the lips, because that area has so many nerve endings, it can be very sensitive. I just know that topical products that we would typically recommend for dealing with dark spots and discolorations, the majority of them, I wouldn't say go ahead and put those on the lips. Maybe niacinamide, you can give that a go. Keep your lips protected at all times when you're outdoors with a SPF rated product. There are several different lip balms, including one that Paula's Choice makes, our lip screen with SPF 50. That can be great to keep that discoloration from getting worse. But also, if the person asking this question is a woman who wears lipstick, an opaque lipstick can help a lot as well. Even if it doesn't have an SPF rating, the natural opacity of those products can shield your lips from some amount of sun damage. Don't know how much. I'm not going to assign a random SPF rating to an opaque lipstick because we just don't know. But what we have seen from the research is that women who wear lipstick regularly have much lower incidences of lip cancers than men who typically don't wear any lipstick whatsoever.
Okay, next question.
Next.
From Luis, are BHA and, this might be a typo, I'm not sure, BHT present in tretinoin products safe?
So there's a difference between BHA, as in beta hydroxy acid, which is salicylic acid, And then there's another cosmetic ingredient called BHA, which is butylated hydroxyanisole, I believe. And that functions as a preservative and antioxidant, as does BHT, very potent antioxidant. I suspect that they are in with the tretinoin to help stabilize it and keep it effective from first to last use. Generally speaking, those ingredients are pretty safe when they're used in lower concentrations. I wouldn't be too concerned about using them on skin. So for a product, for a more bioactive product like tretinoin, and I've even seen, not so much BHA, but I've seen BHT in a handful of high-strength retinol products, and I don't really freak out too much about that. You gotta have something like that in the formula to really help keep those bioactive ingredients potent and stable throughout the usage cycle.
This is from Moni Poi. What do you think about dermaplaning exfoliation at home using a scalpel?
Proceed with caution. It's kind of interesting how this has picked up steam, because it's still, the effects of it, I'm not saying that it can't produce, some impressive before and after results, kind of like everybody was all excited when Biore first launched their pore strips, and you put that piece of adhesive on your nose and then pull it off, and it's like, oh, look at all this stuff that was stuck in my pores, and yay, now it's gone. And then like 2 hours later, your pores were filled back up with gunk, because it really didn't go that deep. It doesn't do, like, for example, what salicylic acid can do in pores. The dermaplaning, I think its best use really would be for women who have that downy peach fuzz type hair that naturally grows on their facial skin, and they find that when they put liquid foundation or tinted moisturizer on, that it kind of tends to get trapped in the hair and kind of emphasize it. So I think from a old school shaving perspective, that the dermaplaning can help with that concern. If you've got that peach fuzz concern going on and you're finding it's interrupting it's changing how your makeup looks, how it applies. But in terms of using the dermaplaning handheld method of as your sole source of exfoliation, you're going to get more bang for your buck from an alpha or a beta hydroxy acid product. And I know it might be tempting as you're watching this and thinking, well, Paula's Choice sells AHA and BHA exfoliants, so of course that's going to be my answer. But there's research behind what I'm saying in terms of the effectiveness of both of those types of ingredients. I haven't seen any comparative studies on those topical acids and dermaplaning, which works better, but I don't even think we need those studies to know which one is going to work better. It's just because of how we know a well-formulated AHA or BHA exfoliant works. Paula's Choice isn't the only brand to offer such products, so I'm making this as a general recommendation. The other concern with dermaplaning is that you have to be careful. It's so, it's easy enough with a gritty, grainy scrub, and there are a lot of gritty, grainy scrubs out there. I've tried too many to count, because I kind of like a scrub every now and then, but I have yet to find one that I think gives me the results I want from a scrub, which is that extra cleansing and refining, but not without feeling like it's tearing the hell out of my skin. And it's easy enough to overdo a scrub. I think it's even easier to overdo dermaplaning. So if you want to try it, because it's getting some hype, just be very, very careful, and just know that it does not replace what an AHA or BHA leave-on exfoliant can do.
Anthony asks, are ingredient percentages cumulative? For example, if I apply moisturizer with 3% niacinamide and a serum with 2% niacinamide, will that make 5% in skin?
Oh, Anthony, I'm not very good at math. Let's see. What's the best way to answer this? Potentially, yes. It's not a sure bet, because when you have a certain concentration of ingredient in one product, and then another product, say you've got 3% niacinamide in a serum, and then you have 2% niacinamide in a moisturizer. The vehicle that the niacinamide is in and how the product was formulated can impact how it affects your skin, how it penetrates, and what type of activity you're going to get. So that's why you could take 3% niacinamide, I say 3% earlier in the serum, 3% niacinamide in a serum, and then if you had a similar product, similar texture, similar base ingredients that had the same amount of niacinamide, if you're looking more apples to apples, I think it would be more accurate to say, yes, by layering those, you're getting 6% or an approximation, but from a chemistry standpoint, it really doesn't, it's tricky to explain, and I'm not the best person to explain this. It's a good question. I wish we had Jen Milley, who's one of our chemists here. I wish she was next to me on the couch so I could get her expertise on this, because I don't think I'm explaining it as adequately as I should be. It isn't, even when you have similar formulas, similar penetration and the same concentration of an ingredient in each, I still don't even think in that situation that 3% and 3% would add up to a 6% total dose. But exactly why that is, I don't know. So let me do this. I'll be back for another live chat next week, but I can come back to this live chat in the comments section as I've done in the past and fill in the blanks on this answer for you guys. So I will ask, I'll ask my colleague after the chat is over, and I'll come back and see, I'll post what she tells me. Because this is over, a little bit over my head, which is kind of surprising when it comes to ingredients, but you know, there's always more to learn.
This is from Roel.
Okay.
How does the standalone exfoliating properties of 10% azelaic acid compare to a BHA or AHA? For example, is 10% azelaic acid product as strong as a 5% glycolic or 1% salicylic acid product?
We don't have the comparative studies to answer that question. I honestly, this is another, I can't give you a definitive answer, but what we do know is we know that azelaic acid has a keratolytic action on skin. They're not, researchers aren't quite sure exactly how it does that. There's some theories that have been posited in the research, but we're not 100% sure. It doesn't appear to work the same way as alpha and beta hydroxy acids do, both of which have a better tendency and affinity to unglue the bonds that are holding dead, dry skin cells to the surface. Azelaic acid seems to work in via a different mechanism of action than that. And so we know what can happen when those, I think azelaic acid's keratolytic action has a greater benefit. It's not so much that it breaks the bonds that holds the dead skin cells to the surface like AHA and BHA do. It's that it somehow works via a different pathway to help clear the pores of excess debris. And salicylic acid does that because of its oil solubility. But again, I believe it does, from what I've seen, it does so via a different pathway. So when you have, I look at azelaic acid, just for my personal use, as another, a secondary option to help with clogged pores and really primarily to help fade the look of dark spots and other discolorations. I think that is where it shines brightest. And like salicylic acid, it's also a very calming ingredient. It's a great ingredient if you are struggling with redness and signs of sensitive skin. If you are someone who has not been able to use AHA or BHA exfoliants, I would encourage you to try a higher strength azelaic acid product, because you might find its unique blend of benefits is just the right combination for your skin.
Okay. Next question. Aphrodite. Hello, Brian. I use every night the vitamin C booster and the resist barrier repair moisturizer.
Okay, first of all, I love that you say vitamin. That's so British. Francis is from the UK.
And the resist barrier repair moisturizer. I have rosacea. I would like to use the BHA gel before the vitamin C. Would it be a good idea? And I think there might be a second. Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. So the vitamin C booster, right? That's what she said?
Yeah.
Okay. Salicylic acid can be beneficial for people who are showing symptoms related to rosacea, particularly redness and the bumpy texture. However, I always have to have this disclaimer in that not everything, even with what the research has shown to be potentially helpful for this skin issue, is going to work in every case. Rosacea skin can be extra finicky. Even the most benign ingredients can cause problems. You're using a fragrance-free bland moisturizer that's got like 6 things in it, and it could not be more basic and innocent for your skin, and yet it causes stinging and sensitivity and worsens your redness. And you're like, what is going on? It's absolutely worth a try. I would just say pay close attention to how your skin responds, and it could be that salicylic acid isn't for you. It could also be that the combination of salicylic acid and vitamin C is going to be too much for your skin. So what I would say to start doing is separate application of the BHA and the vitamin C. Perhaps put the BHA gel on at night. I think that the gel texture of that exfoliant, I think, is a better option at night, and then the vitamin C booster can go on during the day. I also, if you're only going to use our vitamin C booster once, instead of twice per day, I like recommending that product to be applied in the morning, simply because topical vitamin C has been shown to be such an amazing antioxidant when skin is exposed to daylight. You still need sunscreen, but vitamin C just is a kind of a wonder when it comes to really helping to defend skin against environmental aggressors, not only UV light, but also the effects of airborne pollutants. It's just a great antioxidant. It's one of the reasons why it's a naturally occurring antioxidant in our skin, along with vitamin E.
Melissa says, should you always use your AHA or BHA before your serums and moisturizers?
In terms of order of application, there's no hard and fast rule there, but I would default to yes, simply because putting, whether you're applying 1 or 2 exfoliants at the same time, some people like layering, either way, their action on skin helps pave the way for what you apply afterwards to work even better. It will enhance penetration of the products that you apply afterwards, but that penetration is only going to go as far as the size of the ingredients lets it. So it's not about using an AHA or BHA and that will enhance penetration of everything else that you put on afterwards. It is still about what size are the ingredients, because some ingredients, their molecular size is smaller, so they go a bit further into skin. Some go not quite as far. Some are designed to stay on the surface, and that's exactly what you want. You want that multi-level protection, repair, replenishment that great skincare products can provide. You don't want everything to penetrate as far as possible, because then nothing's left on the surface, which is your skin's first line of defense.
This is a good question from Daniel. He says, do we have more control over the long-term quality of our skin or the short-term quality?
Both. Yeah, you have more control than you know. Depending on whose research you're looking at, because the statistic varies, what I've seen the most is that about 80% of what most people perceive as visible signs of aging on skin is all about environmental damage, which not only is UV light, sunlight exposure, tanning, but it's also about environmental exposure to pollutants, to some extent to blue light, particularly from our phones. Put it in night mode, people, leave it in that mode all the time. You'll just get the yellow light that's harmless. We have an article about that on paulaschoice.com, expert advice. Seriously, sidebar here, check out our article on blue light. It can potentially not only save your skin from the damaging effects of blue light, but it could also save your eyesight, which is an even bigger deal in the realm of blue light exposure from digital devices, from those things that we hold inches from our face hours at a time, every single day. Including myself, here's my phone. It's like this, and I have it on night mode or yellow light around the clock, and it sucks at first. You'll think it just looks awful, but then in about 2 days, you're totally used to it. And then when you put it back in regular mode, you're like, whoa, that's bright. I can't handle that anymore. I switched everything, my iPad, my laptop, my monitor at home, it's all yellow light now. I'd like to keep my vision, and it's important. And I went down a rabbit hole and completely forgot the question.
Long-term versus
Oh,
short-term.
long-term versus short-term, yeah. Well, I answered it right away, because you can do both. What environmental protection, eating a healthy diet, not engaging in unhealthy habits, smoking or any sort of tobacco use is a huge skin killer. I'm a former smoker. I'm so glad that I quit. I absolutely noticed a difference in my skin within about 6 months after stopping, even though I was using good skincare and sun protection all along. I will say this, if you haven't been good about environmental exposure, if you haven't been very good about following a skincare routine, and you start being sun smart and you start using great products, gentle products, products with proven ingredients that replenish and rebuild and help repair skin, you'll notice a dramatic difference within a short period of time. So that is like a huge impact in the short term. And then you'll get to a point where your skin is in maintenance mode. And you might go for a long period of time where you really don't see any changes to your skin for better or for worse, but that doesn't mean that the skincare that you've been using has stopped working or somehow become less effective. That's one of the questions that we get fairly often, right, Francis, as far as like, it stems from age, and it's usually from somebody in their 20s. They want to know if they can start using retinol or if it's too soon. And if you start too soon, does that mean the retinol won't work when you really need it to? And then sometimes they ask if using retinol too soon will cause the skin to thin, and therefore they'll see more signs of aging as they get older from ongoing retinol use, and neither of those is true. Retinol is great for your skin really at any age. I wouldn't slather it on a child because they have so much great stuff in their skin. Retinol is kind of superfluous, but as we age, as we accumulate more environmental damage, and as our skin gradually loses the ability to stop doing what it used to do naturally to keep itself healthy, retinol can be a lifesaver. And it is going to work for you just as well if you're 22 versus when you're 52, 72. You may have a different response to it in terms of sensitivity depending on how your skin changes with age, but that's simply a matter of adjusting the products that you use and doing that fine-tuning that all of us need to do with our skincare routine. So yeah, I think it can have an effect on both short and long term, particularly somebody who starts wearing a sunscreen every day in their teen years. The long-term benefits of that, if you look at somebody who, two people born the same year, one of them starts using sunscreen at the age of 14 or 15, the other one kind of loosey-goosey about it, doesn't really get serious about daily sun protection until they're in their mid-40s, because, oh my gosh, I'm seeing fine lines and wrinkles and brown spots, and what do I do? And I know a lot of people who fall exactly into that description. There's no question that the person who started using sunscreen and got sun smart earlier in life is going to have better looking skin and when they reach their mid-40s than someone who didn't. It's just a fact of life. Because that's a great example of the long-term impact of skincare.
Okay, thank you. What's your opinion on under-eye patches? Worth the money or no? That's from Megan.
Hey Megan. So there's some decent ones out there. I think overall it's a bit more of a novelty, but if what is infused in the patches and what you're giving your skin is an overall good formula, I don't have any problem with it. I think if you're dealing with some superficial puffiness, not puffiness that most people would describe as under eye bags that actually occur when the fat pad beneath the eye shifts out of place and then pooches beneath the skin, that type of puffiness can't be addressed by skincare. It's pretty much all about surgery by that point, and the surgical results can be fantastic. But if your puffiness is just the garden variety type, you know, you wake up with puffy eyes, or you maybe had too much salt or done a little bit too much partying, those eye patches can really help to reduce that puffiness, to take down that swelling, if they contain nice, gentle, soothing ingredients. I don't think there's a whole heck of a lot to the stories that you'll see on some of those eye gels, eye patch type products, that the patch itself allows the ingredients to infuse into skin or penetrate further. As I was saying earlier, the ingredients are going to penetrate and get to where they need to be in skin based on their size, not via what material they're blended with. And that similar line of thinking also applies to sheet masks, because some sheet masks are sold with the claim that the mask material itself propels the ingredients further into skin, and it just, I don't think it's true.
Okay, this question is from Erin. Are exfoliating rinse-off treatments worth using? So, for example, 30% AHA, 2% BHA, or would using a weekly 10% AHA or 4% BHA be more effective in the long run?
I think if you are using a higher strength AHA, BHA, multi-acid, single acid, if the concentration of acids is in the 30 to 40% range, that's the type of product that you would ideally want to rinse off your skin after several minutes. You know, there are products like that on the market. I would say follow the usage instructions. Don't just leave it on your skin overnight. Don't apply it more than what the label advises. I think those are fine as rinse-off exfoliants. I think that when you're dealing with a more potent product like that, you can get some pretty good results leaving it on your skin for a short period of time. Whereas the lower strength exfoliants, the other concentrations that you mentioned, or the more typical concentrations that you'd see for BHA, like 1 to 2%, AHAs between 5 and 10%, those ideally, I'm not a big fan of short-term use of those products in terms of, I wouldn't say put on an AHA exfoliant at 5% and then rinse it off after 10, 15 minutes. That you'd want to leave on the skin longer. It just needs more time to work to deliver its best possible results.
Okay. Okay, next question.
Of course,
From-
I'm just staring into a little phone. We had technical issues with our main camera.
And Jana asks, hi Brian, can we use BHA under the eye? I have oily skin but dry under eyes.
You could certainly, yes, you can up to the orbital bone. I wouldn't, and I wouldn't recommend applying BHA on the eyelid. Reason for that, it's not because, oh, it's horrible for the eyelid, it's when you put something on the eyelid, it's just much greater chance that it's going to get into the eye itself. So stop at the orbital bone. You mentioned your skin around the eye is dry. I would follow with either an emollient facial moisturizer or an eye cream if you prefer eye creams. A lot of people do, they want whatever they put around their eye to say eye on the packaging. I get it. But just so you know that if you're using a gentle, well-formulated facial moisturizer that will work for the skin around your eyes in terms of emolliency and moisture, there's no reason you couldn't just do that.
SN12 asks, does oral consumption of ceramides help for something like dry colour skin, especially on the body in winter, sort of like crepey skin?
You know, I think that you might see some benefit to it, but I wouldn't advise somebody to drink ceramides and forego applying topical products that contain ceramides. That is, the topical method is going to be your most direct route. Consuming ceramides in a beverage or in a food product, once it gets into the body, goes through the digestive process. How much of it actually reaches the areas of skin that need it most is debatable. It's kind of the same thing with collagen drinks. In fact, I think in that situation, the collagen, which is a larger molecule, is broken down enough by the digestive system that nothing resembling collagen really makes it to your skin whatsoever. It doesn't mean it doesn't have nutritional value, but I just don't think you're going to see younger looking skin. So yeah, stick with applying ceramides. I don't think there's any harm and using taking a ceramide drink or supplement, as long as what's with the ceramides is safe. And supplements, that's an unregulated industry largely in many countries. So don't assume just because you can buy it over the counter or from a health food store that it's inherently safe. I highly recommend a website called consumerlab.com to read in-depth information about all types of supplements, including vitamins and various plant extracts that you'll see advertised or read about in magazines. It is a subscription-based site, but it's maybe $30 or $40 a year, and as much as I look at stuff like this, it's well worth it. And we're talking about your health, so it's $30 isn't too much to spend to guarantee you don't have a terrible reaction to an over-the-counter supplement, which is not regulated like a drug would be. There's a lot of great ceramide-enriched moisturizers out there, including my personal favorite, our Daily Replenishing Body Cream, which I am missing. I did not bring it with me on this trip, and I kind of wish I did, because I don't like the hotel body lotions because they're so fragranced.
Okay, question from Emma. Is it okay to use a muslin cloth every night to remove a cleansing balm, or is that too harsh? I've used one a few times and like the results, but I've read that you should only use them a few times a week.
It really is about how soft the cloth is, and whether or not you're dampening it first. When you're dampening the cloth, you're automatically reducing surface tension. Rubbing or massage, I shouldn't say rub, massaging a wet cloth, whether it's muslin or a cotton washcloth, over your skin, the surface tension is going to be much less than if you were to take that same piece of fabric and move it over the skin in its dry state. You're going to get more friction that way, and friction is irritating. It causes the skin to move in directions that can eventually sag it, not to mention disrupts the barrier. So if the cleanser that you're using is gentle, if you're dampening the muslin cloth, and if you are using a gentle massaging motion and not pressing really hard or rubbing, I think it's fine to use every night. I don't see the harm in that. But pay attention to your skin. If you're noticing signs of irritation, redness, sensitivity, and you're looking at your cleansing product and it's gentle and fragrance-free, a lot of cleansing balms out there contain some fragrant oils, and I know they smell amazing, but those smells are not good for your skin. So in that case, I would definitely blame the cleanser and not the cloth. I've yet to come across a scented muslin cloth. Have you seen one or smelled one? Yeah, they're typically just cloth. So I think it's fine if following those usage guidelines I just outlined.
Ashley asked, what are your thoughts on double cleansing? Should I be using a makeup removal balm / oil first before my cleanser, or is the cleanser by itself followed by toner enough?
I'm neither pro nor con about double cleansing. What I tell people is that whether or not you need to double cleanse depends on, personal preference, of course. If you like the ritual of doing 2 different cleansers as part of your wind down for the night, more power to you. I'm not going to tell anyone not to do that. But what I do encourage is to get through your nighttime routine as efficiently as possible, because we all have lives, and we have partners we want to spend time with, maybe TV shows we want to catch up on. So I'm not for advocating skincare steps that keep you at your sink for any longer than you have to be. My general guidance on double cleansing is that it really is only necessary if you wear heavy makeup, full face heavy makeup, long wearing waterproof type formulas, that you just don't, when you use just your cleanser and then you move on to your toner, you're getting a lot of makeup on the cotton pad or ball. That's a good sign that the amount of makeup you wear, you should probably be double cleansing with an oil or balm and then a water soluble formula. The other reason to double cleanse is if you wear mineral type sunscreen on your face and neck, because the modern day mineral sunscreen formulas, even if they don't say water resistant, they tend to be harder for a conventional cleanser to break down on its own. But a cleansing balm or a cleansing oil, because those are a different type of solvent that can really break down those sunscreens, in that instance it can be helpful as well. If none of that applies to you, or if maybe you only wear heavier makeup, for a job interview, or if you're going to be filmed, then no, I don't think double cleansing is something you need to do every day. Well, night, actually.
Okay, this is from Brugia. Can the use of tretinoin and sunscreen prevent sagging and fat loss if used consistently?
No, unfortunately. It'll help to some extent because it'll help with sagging to some extent because ongoing use of tretinoin, of course, sun protection will help prevent the breakdown of skin supportive structure, and then the tretinoin can bring about some amount of supportive elements, supportive tissue repair. But the factors that cause sagging, and what was the other thing she mentioned?
Fat loss.
Oh, fat loss. Man, I wish there was something we could do topically to prevent fat loss, or something that we could spot apply to our midsections that would, send the fat elsewhere. It doesn't exist. The fat pads we have in our face shift out of place at various times. That's why you could look at two women aged 75, 65 even, and one of them looks more jowly, even if they're the exact same weight, and the other one doesn't. But the other one may, her forehead may look, her brow area may look a little heavier because the fat pads up here have started to shift, but then in her friend, the fat pads down here have started to shift, so she's looking more jowly. There's a bit of genetics behind that, but topically there isn't anything you can do to stop that. Sun protection is going to help to some degree, but it's still, it's the effects of gravity. And then for both women and men, gravity is an issue, but also the fact that as we get older, we lose bone mass, and our skin keeps growing. I think I've mentioned that before, but essentially what it comes down to is as we get older and older, our face has less scaffolding, yet there's more skin, and it can't keep up. So things go down.
Ruta says, what's your opinion on petroleum jelly and paraffin liquidum? Is there a difference between them?
Well, petroleum jelly is also known as petrolatum, or by the brand name Vaseline. And you get mineral oil. The Latin name for that, you'll see on a label, is the paraffinum liquidum. That's mineral oil. Mineral oil is a byproduct of petrolatum. It's a further refining of the petrolatum to get the consistency of mineral oil. Both of them are considered some of the best, most benign moisturizing ingredients ever found. It's actually a little sad that they both have a bad rap. They do come from crude oil as far as how they start, but you know what? Crude oil, even though it sounds disgusting, it's natural. The process, though, that turns crude oil into either petrolatum or mineral oil is a highly involved purifying, refining process, so that the end result that you get, the pure mineral oil, the pure petrolatum, does not resemble the crude oil from whence it came. We don't formulate with those ingredients as much as we used to, simply because of the misinformation out there, and there are some more modern day equivalents to those ingredients that don't have the bad rap or the negative association to them. And then the other thing, of course, now this makes more practical sense to me, is that even though mineral oil and petrolatum are fine ingredients, particularly for dry skin, neither of them have what I would call an elegant texture. They can feel heavy and too emollient or greasy on skin. So while I think that both of them can be good for spot treating, or like a petrolatum-based lip balm, or a mineral oil-based balm for very dry areas, I don't like the feel of either ingredient applied to larger areas. But in smaller amounts, as a blend in a facial moisturizer, for example, with some silicone, some other emollients, some ceramides and whatnot, I think that they can be great for dry skin.
Okay, well, that 20 seconds.
Oh, that's it?
So that's it.
Oh, well, I'm going to wrap up. All right, well, I will say goodbye from the home office here in Seattle, and I will be on chat next week back in the home base. Thank you so much for watching.